What's up everybody, Jared here with carbuzz.com, and today we are at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway to drive the new 2023 Nissan Z. I'm really hoping that you've already seen my video where I do a full walk around of this car because I go in great detail about the differences between the trims. I show you the base trim, I show you this nicer trim, I go through the interior, the trunk space, all of that. I really hope you'll watch that. I'll be sure to include a link in the description below, but in this video, we are going to reveal some important details about this car, including how much it costs and maybe more importantly, how it drives. I will do a quick walk around in this video just to get you acquainted with the car before we take it out on a drive. I'm loving the retro modern styling that they've done here. The headlights are kind of a throwback to the 240Z. They've kept the platform the same, but they've modified a lot of things about it to make it feel more modern. New engine under the hood, new wheels, new styling, you know, completely, although it does retain the same basic shape as the 370, which is not a bad thing. The 370 was a pretty good looking car that aged quite well. 300ZX inspired taillights that look fantastic. I mentioned the name, it is just Z, there is no number after it as well. I'm loving the way this car looks in the back end. It retained its large hatchback trunk, so we've got plenty of space in that trunk, which is quite nice. It's kind of like the old Corvette used to be as well. We've got some crazy interior options on the Z, including this magnificent blue leather seat. You can also get black and red. You could get black and yellow on the Proto, which is like a special edition version of this car. And you can get cloth seats as well on the base one, but these higher trim have leather and suede perforated, which is quite nice. We've got lots of new technology here. So I gotta show you this. We've got a new 9-inch touchscreen. We'll go ahead and fire this up. So 9 inches on this performance trim, the sport trim, is going to get a smaller 8-inch unit. We've got the carryover gauges up here, the gauge pods. I love these. We've got our turbo boost, turbo pressure, all of that kind of stuff. And I've got to show you, this comes standard on all Nissan Zs. So this is the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster. So right now we have it in its enhanced mode. Normally it will look like this. So you'll see the tachometer and speedometer become much more pronounced in this mode. And if you are doing some spirited driving or you're driving on the racetrack, you can put it in sport mode. You get a big, massive tachometer. You get that shift light at the top, which is super helpful. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And you do get a digital version of that boost gauge that you get up there. This is a great readout. This is one of the best digital gauge clusters I've seen in a sports car. It just is so configurable, and it gives such great information. I'm very, very happy with what Nissan did here on this car. On this screen, we've got a 6-speed manual transmission on this car, but you can also get this with a 9-speed automatic transmission. The 9-speed automatic is going to come standard with launch control. This 6-speed manual has something called launch assist, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's like launch control, it just limits the wheel spin, and it also has I think Nissan's calling it something different, but it's basically no lift shift. So when you do the launch control, you can shift straight into second and to the third without taking your foot off of the throttle, which is quite cool as well. So yeah, that's basically the interior. Again, check out my other video if you want a more in-depth look at it, because for this video, I'm sure you're more interested in how the Z drives. Let's go. All right, so now that we have looked around the Z, both inside and out, it's time to get it out on the road, where we've got to talk about the biggest change, which comes under the hood. The 3.7 liter VQ naturally aspirated V6 engine is finally retired. That engine came out back in like 2008, 2009, and it was a great engine. I really loved it. But next to some of the turbocharged cars that you can buy today, it felt pretty antiquated, pretty slow. Now we've got Nissan's 3-liter twin-turbocharged V6 engine. It's the same unit that you found in the Infiniti Q50 and Q60, the red sport models, meaning it's got the most powerful state of tune. 400 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque. That's like a 68 horsepower improvement over that old 370Z. And boy, oh boy, you can really, really feel that. It's 18 more horsepower even than the inline six engine from BMW that you get in the Toyota Supra. And I've gone ahead and put it in sport mode, and we are driving the automatic trim. Let's just feel how fast it is. Takes a second to downshift. Woohoo! Short shifts a little bit before that 7,000 RPM red line when you leave it in full auto mode, but man, oh man, it pulls. First of all, I want to say that this engine sounds fantastic, better than I remember it sounding in any Infiniti model, and honestly, that sounds better than the Nissan GTR. There, I said it. That's how good this Z engine sounds. It's fantastic. So you've got two transmission options that you can pair that with. You can get a 6-speed manual for no cost. It's not any additional, or obviously no additional cost, this 9-speed automatic that I was like, oh man, I'm stuck with the automatic in the first portion of the day, but it's quick. This is so much quicker than the old 7-speed automatic transmission that you would get in the 370Z. That thing was just so slow to downshift, and this does kind of get buried in some gears every once in a while, but if you go ahead and put it in full manual mode, you've got so much torque to work with that you just don't need to shift it that much. It's really great. But if you do, the paddle shifters, these are the same paddles that you get on a Nissan GTR. So there's some little bragging rights for you. If you buy a Z with the automatic transmission, you get to say, my paddles are from a GTR. And the overall driving experience is really nice. I don't think it's too dissimilar from the old 370Z. It's sort of more tuned for like GT, for like roads like this. You've got a decent amount of roll from the suspension, but nothing too crazy. Very similar to the Supra, in fact. The big change here is we now have electronic power steering, whereas the 370 had hydraulic power steering. This is an electric rack, and I think it's really nice. It's very nicely balanced. I like the feel on center. It gets a little bit confusing when you get it off center, but it's a very nicely balanced car. It's a little bit louder than I was hoping. I would hope they would have given it a little bit more sound deadening, but this is a sports car after all. I think it's just comfortable enough that I wouldn't mind driving this car for long distances on the highway. I would certainly be happy driving it every day, especially if I had just like a normal, like a fun sort of commute with good roads. But yeah, this 370Z, Z, I'm never gonna get used to not saying that without numbers. This engine is such a major improvement to the car, and this 9-speed automatic transmission is so much better than the old 7-speed unit. But I think it's now time I'm gonna have to step out of this automatic version and drive the one that you probably want me to drive, which is the 6-speed manual. Nissan says that in the outgoing generation, I think it was something like 60 or 70% of drivers opted for the automatic. And with this new generation, I'm happy to report that if you do opt for the automatic, you're in very good hands. This is a very good transmission and a very fun sports car. All right, so now I've hopped into a 6-speed manual Z. This one is blue with the gorgeous blue leather interior that I absolutely adore. And we can sort of talk about the differences between the manual and the manual transmission model and the automatic transmission model. And I do like the manual transmission model a little bit more. I like the gear ratios. They have changed them a little bit since the 370Z. Because we have turbocharged power, I'm not feeling the need to shift quite as much. I just punched it from like mid-level RPM and it just took off because there is just so much available torque there. And I think with the manual, you can just use that power so well. It's so easy and usable. We've got these big sweeping corners here where I can just leave it in third, fourth gear, 4,000 RPM, just pulling away. I mentioned how good this 3-liter inline six or 3-liter V6 sounds compared to the GTR. I think it sounds even better. Let's try that race start function here. So foot on the clutch, foot on the gas, and it's gonna launch. Oop, there we go. So I think what it did there was, I think it wasn't expecting it to be on such an uphill slant there. It limited my power going down. We're gonna see if we can try that again there, because that did not feel like a super quick launch. It felt like it limited me or something like that. But that is the launch assist function that we get on the manual. I explained it a little bit when we were in the automatic car. That was my first time trying it. They had us out on the track doing launches, but they didn't have the sport trim because you need, or the higher trim level, because you need the upper trim level. The base model manual transmission car doesn't have that launch control function. So I think we're gonna come up on a little bit of a straightaway here that I should be able to give it on. But woohoo! Man, it pulls all the way up to that red line, which is nice. I love the sport gauge that I showed you earlier. Just being able to see exactly when to shift with that big shift light there up at the top. I'm liking the rev match downshifting as well. That was a feature I always loved on the 370Z, and it's really good here as well. All right, so let's try that launch control again. Foot on the clutch, first gear, flat out, and dump the clutch. Yep, it's gonna limit, okay. Very smooth, no wheel spin, just a little bit of chirp from the tires. Okay, so I feel what that did now. It definitely limits you a little bit, although maybe that could be because I left traction control on. We're gonna try that one more time. This time I'm gonna turn traction control off and we're gonna see how it works. So one more time here. One more launch control. I just want to make sure I do this as properly as possible for everybody watching right here. First gear, foot on the clutch, flat out, launch it. Nope, same thing, okay. Yep, so it definitely wasn't traction control kicking in. It is just how the system is going to limit you on the throttle and pull power away so that it can smoothly get itself off of the line. So that's kind of interesting. Not very dramatic, but I guarantee you that is probably the quickest way to get this car off of the line. As far as the shifter goes, I want to say I do like this shifter a lot better, both the actual shifter mechanism and the lever compared to the 370Z. I like this sort of just round ball shifter. It's quite nice, quite easy to hold. All of the gears are nicely spaced and very easy to use. You don't really need to heel toe because of the rev match downshifting. But yeah, it slides into gear so much easier, but it still has that nice notchy feeling. There's a nice rev match downshift, just like I said it would do. And yeah, definitely I'm loving how this transmission feels, because I felt like the old 370Z just required way too much of a heavy hand. You really had to mash it into the next gear. And with this one, I'm not really feeling that. So I do like this new 6-speed manual. I like the new 9-speed automatic. I think that whichever option you go with, they have improved them quite well over the old 370Z. So good improvements all around. All right, so that was the 2023 Nissan Z. I'm very impressed with the styling updates. I think they did just enough on the interior to make it feel modern, and that new engine adds a lot of thrust that wasn't there before on the 370Z. Now we talk about pricing, because I can finally reveal that to you. So this car, for the base sport trim over here, $39,990. That is a super impressive price to pay for twin turbocharged 400 horsepower. Just put things in perspective here. The Supra with its 255 horsepower 4-cylinder engine starts at 43 grand, and you'll have to spend a heck of a lot more if you want to get the 6-cylinder, which still doesn't have as much power as the Z. So that's the sport trim, $39,990 for the manual or the auto. They're both the exact same cost. I like that as well. Now, if you want to get the performance, and I really do think you should get the performance, you get a limited slip differential, bigger wheels, bigger brakes, you get nicer interior, all that stuff, but it is quite a hefty price bump. $49,990 is going to get you this performance trim. Again, I still think that is very price competitive with Toyota when you look at the Supra. If you want one of the Z Protos, one of the 500, good luck getting one of those, but it's $52,990. I think it's pretty cool. You get bronze wheels, you get some special accents, but honestly, I think you're fine with just this performance trim. I think that Nissan has priced this car perfectly in the market right now. It is such that nice middle point between where you start getting into the BMWs and Audis of the world, but you're ready to step up from the Miatas and the Subaru BRZs of the world. This car came at a great time. It still feels old school in a couple of ways, but they've modernized it in a way that it no longer feels so old like the 370 did. This, you sat in this car and you're like, I'm sitting in a 15-year-old car. You sit in this and you feel like you're sitting in a modern Nissan. So if you are in the market for a 400 horsepower sports car and you want to spend under 40 grand, this is kind of your only option unless you want to get one of the American muscle cars. It's really cool. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this review of the 2023 Nissan Z. As always, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. I'll see you next time.